75 years ago this weekend saw the end of Britain's colonial rule of India. The nation of 340 million people was divided, creating two independent countries, Muslim-majority Pakistan and Hindu-majority India. It's a moment in history known as partition. It triggered a massive forced migration and left an estimated 2 million people dead in religious violence. Imtiaz Tyab looks at how the trauma of the event still affects South Asians generations later.
An unprecedented mass migration has begun as millions of people make their way across borders, a consequence of a century-long British strategy of divide and rule.
Never has the Marvel Cinematic Universe introduced viewers to a moment in history quite like this, and transported one of its superheroes on a journey of self-discovery to the site of one of the largest and deadliest mass migrations in modern human history. But that's exactly what the Disney Plus limited series Ms. Marvel does. Iman Vellani plays Kamala Khan, a Muslim Pakistani-American teenager from New Jersey who gained superpowers from a mysterious bangle that once belonged to her grandmother, who disappeared during the partition of British India 75 years ago. Fatima Asghar wrote the acclaimed episode, which tackles the painful history head-on.
Why does what happened in 1947 still resonate so strongly with so many South Asians that when creating Ms. Marvel, the series, it became such a big story arc?
There's so much silence that has been around partition, right? There's silence that the West has had around partition, but there's also silence in South Asian communities and the South Asian diaspora around partition. In part, it's because it's such a traumatic event. We've become increasingly more aware trauma lives in the body and it's passed down through generations. And so we can feel some of this pain even if we don't have words for it.
Generational trauma is central to Ms. Marvel's origin story, like in this poignant scene between Kamala and her grandmother, portrayed by legendary Pakistani film actress Samina Ahmed.
I'm still trying to figure out who I am. My passport is Pakistani. My roots are in India. And in between all of this, there is a border. There is a border marked with blood and pain.
Those borders were drawn in just 5 weeks by a British civil servant who had never traveled further east than Paris or understood India's religious, linguistic, and cultural diversity. After 2 centuries of brutal colonial rule, Britain's exit from the colony it plundered such a vast fortune from quickly turned into a bloodbath.
Fleeing from their looted, blood-stained towns comes a new exodus.
It's estimated up to 2 million people were killed and around 20 million were displaced as they tried to make their way to what became Muslim-majority East and West Pakistan or Hindu-majority India.
By 1858, the Crown ruled all of India.
A painful past other South Asian creatives want people to better understand. At London's British Film Institute is Child of Empire, an animated virtual reality journey through partition, which follows the stories of 2 characters making opposite journeys across the new borders. Irfan Sadati and Spar Shahuja created the project.
Partition was 75 years ago. Why does this story matter today?
We still talk about the Holocaust or World War II or the Armenian genocide as things that continue to be part of lived world history. I think partition in the same manner is the defining moment of modern South Asia. The other reason why we don't want to leave partition in the past is that the United Kingdom tends to see partition as South Asian history when it is very much British history.
In the 3/4 of a century since independence, tensions between India and Pakistan have boiled over into 4 wars, a nuclear arms race, and the creation of Bangladesh in 1972. As a new generation tries to reckon with the pain of partition through art, Fatima Asghar hopes it will lead to a more unified future.
When you look at an event like partition and you see even 75 years later that things like that are happening today, you're like, this is important. Like, this is why we need to actually break some of these silences, to contend with our history, to deal with our pain, and to create these lines of solidarity so that we can actually protect each other.
Do you know what you are?
For CBS Saturday Morning, Imtiaz Tyab, London.
I'm a superhero.
Wow. So important.
Well, it's still stunning to hear the numbers. 2 million people estimated to have died.
Yes.
20 million displaced in partition.
That's an incredible number. And as she said, you keep seeing it happen over and over in history, and people don't know about it, which is why it's so important, like pieces like this, to be done. So we know.
It is a part of your past. It's a part of your future generations, always.
Reminder.
Yeah.